If something bad happens to you, yes, there is a doctor on site, and the Air Force usually has a flight surgeon, but they're not going to be the most capable people to support you from a life support standpoint. Your safety is paramount. So what's going to happen in the best case scenario, if an airplane is on the sea ice at the time, you are a 5.5-hour flight from Christchurch, New Zealand, where the nearest real hospital exists.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and to talk smarter strategies on how to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Joining us today is Matt Barnes, a resort-oriented EHS professional with decades of experience improving safety and operational performance in heavy manufacturing, remote operations, and high-volume industrial environments. From cutting his teeth at James Hardie to leading a safety program for the Raytheon Polar Services in Antarctica, which I can't wait to hear more about. He has been building high-performance teams for not as long as, actually for longer than he looks. So he looks like he's about 25 years old, and this resume does not say the same thing. So today he is at MD&A. Matt has spent his career focusing on human operational performance, principles of reducing risk, creating a better operational and safety culture, and improving the workers' challenging environments to keep them safe without adding stress. Matt is a practitioner of human performance improvement. He's a strategic thinker. He's a data-driven guy, a mentor, a great human being. I can attest to that. And he is used to working in complex environments. So he has thousands of personnel across power plants and repair facilities and industrial sites that he's responsible for at least overseeing their safety program. And I am excited to say welcome. So welcome, Matt.
I appreciate being here, Michael. I love talking about safety, and I love talking about how organizations can improve. So let's do it.
Let's do it. And I got to say, Matt is one of the best conversationalists that I've had on the podcast. We already have had such a good time talking about just life and the things that we've both been through in our journeys. Before we start, Matt, as we start, I guess, because we have started, let's talk about your personal world. Like, tell us who you are and let our listeners know a little bit about your personal journey. And you've got some interesting stories. So go ahead and tell us family, friends, life, geos, all that stuff.
Yeah. So I live in upstate New York now. I enjoy living in upstate New York. A lot of people like to complain about winters. I don't complain about winters. My friends and I actually get really excited about winter because that's whenever we hopefully get to get our snowmobiles out and head out and go on some high-speed, well-controlled adventures. I grew up in Western PA, though, so just north of Pittsburgh. I kind of grew up with a little bit of a EHS bloodline. I have a couple of relatives that are EHS professionals, actually two cousins. One works in the kind of pharmaceutical type industry, and the other worked in oil and gas. We all were classically trained EHS professionals. We got degrees in EHS from schools in Western PA. It was mostly inspired by an uncle of ours, though. He was a non-traditional EHS professional at the local General Electric plant in our town. It was a facility that supported the town, and there was this general connection and love that he had as somebody that came off his tools and helped work with that facility to make safety a reality there. So he inspired us. We went off and learned We got our classic training, and then we all headed off into the world. The one thing that I'm really proud of early in my career is I purposely chose a career path that put me in what I like to call the frying pan right out of the gate. I chose difficult opportunities, and I was in situations kind of right on the front line where I was solving real EHS problems for people that did the difficult, dirty, hazardous work. Now, back then, I didn't call it that. I just embraced the reality of how rewarding it is to be an EHS professional in a high hazard industry. And, that practical connection that you have as an EHS professional working with operations folks to solve real problems that are putting people at risk. And to me, that's always been something that's resonated with me as an EHS leader. So throughout my career, I've always wanted to support organizations that were trying to do work in industries that had the potential to be hazardous. So whether that was my, 8 to 9 years at James Hardie Building Products, where I cut my teeth, I was in that frying pan, to my transition that I had supporting the U.S. Antarctic program in Antarctica in a real world environment where people were doing work. These aren't just scientists. These are people that are supporting the power plant that is at McMurdo Station, wastewater treatment facilities, heavy equipment mechanics and operators, linemen, all sorts of individuals that are doing that work. I then transitioned to work for Alcoa, the big aluminum company, which is where I fortunately learned about human and organizational performance, and then continued my career with mechanical dynamics and analysis now, where I've been for 12 years. So just kind of that journey and path was all about being a practitioner. And I only hire practitioners to support me and my teams, and those people that do the difficult, dirty, hazardous work. And as a result of that, I always have a highly engaged team that is looking for the next opportunity to do things better.
Man, that is a journey. I have so many things that I want to talk to you about just from what you have just said. Um, on the personal note, you're in upstate New York. You love it. I appreciate that. My wife's family is actually all based in Syracuse, and her mom was from Watertown.
When I worked for Alcoa, I was very close to Watertown. That's a snowy place.
Yes, that is a very snowy place. And similarly, when I met my wife, she was in Southern California. However, they're all from Phoenix, and so similar. You said that you don't complain about the snow. It brings you the fun of the snow. I actually don't complain about the heat. Everybody goes, "Oh, it gets so hot." It's like, yeah, it's part of. If you want to live here, you just get used to the things that are uncomfortable at times. And like I say, you don't have to shovel sunshine. And I can always
Never,
I can always go
never.
I can
But it
always
can
go
kill you.
someplace else. It can, but so can ice, like in Antarctica, which I will get to. So from a personal journey perspective, do you have a family? Have you gone down that path? You
Yeah,
obviously are very accomplished
I have an
work-wise.
11-year-old daughter that I
Okay.
love like anything. It's just she's kind of my sidekick, and we go on adventures together. So her mother is more of the practical kind of home person, with arts and crafts being a big part of what they do. I'm the dad that takes her daughter on adventures. So I travel quite a bit for work. I get to present at a couple of conferences every year. And I always try to use this companion pass that I have on Southwest Airlines to bring my daughter along with me so that she can experience different parts of the world. Last year, actually, we were presenting at a power conference outside of Phoenix. I took her to Phoenix. That's the furthest west she had been at the time. There was a really great water park at the resort that I was presenting at. So that made her first Phoenix experience great. It was pretty fancy. And she actually said, Michael, that she said when she grows up, she wants to live in Phoenix. So, or at least Arizona, she said. So we'll see how that plays out. But I also sees the opportunity to take her up and see San Francisco or on that side of the country. And then this year, I presented in Washington D.C. and I brought her along with me to see Washington D.C. too.
That's fantastic, and I commend you for that. I used to do that a lot with my kids, and unfortunately, funny you should bring this up. I just came back uh, Sunday night very late because airplanes seem to always break down if I'm on them. I don't know why. So we were on the tarmac for, fortunately, not while in the air. So, but we were on the tarmac for a few hours trying to second flight ready to come home. But I was in New York, and I had the benefit of going to a wonderful festival that raises money for charities. It's called the Global Citizens Festival, which is 60,000 people in Central Park, and it was a wonderful event. And I have a good friend of mine who's the head of that company, that group. And I tried to bring my son, who's a junior in college, studying architecture, but I had to go out there on Thursday. And I tried to bring my daughter, who's a junior in high school, but I had to go out there on Thursday. And they are both not able to go anywhere during the school year because they're juniors. And so he's going to go to graduate school and she's going to go to college. And they had tests. And so enjoy it while you can, while they're 10, 11, 12 years old. And because there will become a point that you're like, I miss taking them with me and letting them experience these things. And so fortunately, I was able to grab my niece while I was out there, and she went to this festival with me. And it was a great event. So I love the fact that you do that. And, you know, the division of roles in the kids' relationships is awesome. I think that's part of the benefit of having a mom and dad that have different interests and capabilities and, inclinations. It's also some of the things that get challenging in life when, if one of you wants to be an adventurer and the other one wants to be at home. I can relate well, but there's so many benefits to it as well. My kids are successful because of her ability to do that. And they're also adventurers because of my ability to do that. So I think you can relate. So tell me about, we've got to talk about Antarctica. I mean,
Yeah,
come
everybody
on.
loves talking about
Well,
Antarctica.
yeah. I mean,
I think you can see over my
everything.
shoulder, actually. I just
Yes.
those pictures are always there. They're there on
Yes.
every conference call that I'm on.
Yes.
If you look, the top picture up there is me on top of I think a hill in Antarctica that overlooks Mount Erebus, the inactive volcano on near McMurdo Station down there. And then my favorite one is the one actually below it. I'm not 100% sure whether this is true or not, but I like to say it. I believe I was the first person to ever think of standing on my head at the South Pole. So I've been to the South Pole 3 times. The first time I was there, whenever I went out to do my hero shot, we call it. It's your first photo you get whenever you visit the South Pole. I immediately wanted to stand on my head. And, you don't have to be creative after I say that to think through what I was trying to do. It was just my photo of me holding the earth up. Now, as a result of my experience in Antarctica, one of the fun things that I get to do, and I've been doing it for 15 years now, is I go to all the local elementary schools. When I say all, I go to like 8 of them every February, and I teach second graders about Antarctica. I consider myself an Antarctic ambassador. And I teach them basic things like, there's no polar bears in Antarctica, but there's plenty of penguins. And I show them pictures of penguins and all this sort of fun stuff. But I also share what the scientists do there, and I try to inspire them. I tell them that the only way that you can visit Antarctica in this particular way is to make sure that you graduate from high school. So I encourage them to study, and I encourage them to be interested in the science and all the activities that go on from that standpoint, because there's real things that go on whenever you're doing work in Antarctica. So everybody imagines all these scientists, but imagine that the continent is 1.5 times the size of North America. These scientists have to get to all these different places to perform their science. So there's base camps throughout it. We're fortunate enough to fly around on helicopters and Basler aircraft, and the U.S. military helps us get down there with LC-130s and C-17s and all these fun, adventurous things that are going on. But at the same time, there's real people doing real work down there. At McMurdo Station, there's 1,100 people in the summer months. Those are scientists, but those are people that are supporting the infrastructure that supports the scientists. There is a vessel that comes down every summer, follows an icebreaker in, and it offloads all the supplies that are needed to run U.S. operations in Antarctica for at least an entire year. So there's every bit of operation that happens with that. The Seabees from the Navy unload this vessel, and we have to figure out where we have to store it so that it can last an entire year. I mentioned all the infrastructure that exists. You have all these tradespeople. Every tradesperson that you could imagine that you need to run a town exists in Antarctica, but we have to support them in a manner where risk is as low as possible, even though you're bringing all these tradespeople in from all around the United States, and sometimes certain parts of the world to mesh together to get their job done. The best thing that ever happens, though, as an EHS professional when you're supporting work in Antarctica is that perception of risk that you don't get when you're performing that same work in the United States. So, one of the first things that we tell people before they deploy to Antarctica as part of their orientation, and I remember doing this as somebody that just really wanted to make sure that this resonated with them, is if something bad happens to you, yes, there is a doctor on site, and the Air Force usually has a flight surgeon, but they're not going to be the most capable people to support you from a life support standpoint. Your safety is paramount. So, what's going to happen in the best case scenario, if an airplane is on the sea ice at the time, you are a 5.5 hour flight from Christchurch, New Zealand, where the nearest real hospital exists. And whenever you have that conversation with somebody and you connect that with ladder safety, right? Something as simple as ladder safety. 3 points of contact on a ladder become a completely different story. It makes it really easy to have those kind of risk management conversations. And there's real risk down there. There's serious injury and fatality risk. There's heavy equipment operating with people beside them at any given time. There's actual power plant facilities. There's electrical infrastructure that could kill somebody. There's heavy work that is occurring. And that connection was helpful. And that is something that I carry with me. And I still will tell the story to your average tradespeople in the power industry now.
Well, you're carrying it to a lot more right now, so that's a good thing. And that's one of the reasons I do this. It's interesting, Matt, that one of the best things about what I get to do for a living is that I try to explain to the average Joe what a safety professional does and what different nuances and expertise are important within being a safety professional, being somebody who is responsible for the programs and operations and training and surveys and all the things. But at the end of the day, human to human experience is the only thing that we really need to care about. Because if you can be somebody like yourself who communicates like you do, and also if you are a human being who needs another human being to do a job, that's what I do for a living. And people are like, oh, you run a tech company. Yeah, we use technology. Oh, you're AI. Yes, we use AI. But I try to explain at the end of the day, all of this is about human to human connection and being able to identify what makes somebody really better than the average bear for doing this component of the job. Like you could go and work in Antarctica now, or you can go to the North Pole. You could go to you can go to Watertown, New York, which is where my mother-in-law is from, as we talked about, which is very, very, very cold. And you can explain to somebody the impact of the weather on doing what you're doing. And you have somebody with the same certifications and capabilities and background and a lot of the same stuff who happens to always lived in Phoenix, may not be the best person to go into the environment of freezing cold and icy that affects things and remote. Now you're right. 5 hours is a long time. You fall off of a ladder and you hit your head and they don't know if you have a brain injury. 5 hours is the difference in living and not living, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it is, yeah.
And as you said, that's the best case scenario. That's assuming a plane is on the ice ready to go.
Yeah. And there are people, just to put this in some crazier context, There's usually around 20 to 25 individuals that winter over at the South Pole every year. And airplanes cannot land at the South Pole in the winter. So those people are 100% on their own from a safety standpoint. Maybe equipment or supplies could be airdropped into those individuals, depending on what's needed. But that just escalates beyond comprehension the need to be proactive about your personal safety and the safety of people around you. So it's just a great perspective to add every once in a while to your organization. Is it's almost like a what if? What if I didn't have that safety net? Could I be safer? Chances are you could. You probably wouldn't be perfect because humans make mistakes, but let's put the effort in to get it right the first time.
I love it. It's funny. You talked about teaching second graders and going and being an ambassador for Antarctica. By the way, I love that too. I think it's the greatest thing. It's probably the thing you look forward to the most every year because these kids, second graders, are the perfect age to come in and talk to, but then leave because you don't want to hang out with them all the time. I love these teachers. They are, God bless them. I hope that they deserve everything that they could ever get because after you're doing these things, it's like, wow, how do you do this every day? On that note, by the way, I would love for you to take photos of the photos on your wall and send them to us, and we will post them with this because I want our viewers to be able to see the pictures of you in Antarctica. I also love the New York workers on the lunchtime break that the famous no fall protection, no nothing, sitting over there. I think it was during the making of the Empire State Building, if I'm not mistaken, but it was
It
one of the
was.
large.
It was the 1930s, the Great Depression.
Yes.
That photo always reminds me of a human performance phrase that I say all the time. People do what they do at the time they do it for reasons they believe they should. That was the context of work at that particular moment. Now, that photo was clearly staged. They didn't eat lunch like that every day, right? Just like, hey, we're a little bit more polished today because we're on a podcast, right? But that's real risk that those individuals took. And ultimately, our role as EHS professionals is to understand how work is really done. And without adding bureaucracy, because bureaucracy actually works against safety, it's our enemy. Without adding bureaucracy, figuring out, or even better, asking how we can support them to create more capacity for safety in the work that they do. And that isn't always the traditional things that we always think about from a fall protection standpoint. There's many other examples that come about that are actually a little bit more practical when you have that real questioning, open-ended conversation with the people that do the difficult, dirty, hazardous work. So that's what I encourage whenever it comes to observations. That's what I encourage when it comes to event learnings. Create this atmosphere of trust where those people that do that real work for a living are willing to tell you the truth about how they really get the job done so that you can have those epiphanies as a problem solver to really solve their problems the right way, or maybe make sure that you're actually solving the right problems to support them.
Absolutely love it. So tell me a little bit so that we can talk about your current role, what you do, some of the challenges that you have in running the programs, or just not necessarily challenges and you're not able to do it, but what makes parts of the job difficult when you're at MD&A and is particularly tell our listeners about the area of the business that you're in and some of the
Yeah, so
challenges
there's a
with it.
couple of things that make my world, I guess, a little bit more challenging, I would say, than maybe other worlds that I've been in. So operations at MD&A are a little bit more complicated because about 50% of our operations occur in what we call the field at customer locations. That's actually performing work at customers' power plants. We are the specialists. We're a very specialized contractor. We focus on turbines and generators, gas turbines and steam turbines in particular. We're great at generators, and we do a lot of generator work. It keeps the lights on.
And us.
Yeah, everybody. Well, this podcast wouldn't exist, right? That's part of our operation, but the other 50% of it occurs at manufacturing and repair facilities for me. And the challenge is you approach EHS, the whole discipline, quite a bit differently whenever you have service personnel that are going to a customer's location, and the little bit of extra control, but also the additional risk that you bring into your house at those repairs locations. So, fortunately, as an EHS professional, I learned early on in my career that you don't force anything on anybody. We don't try to be consistent just for the sake of being consistent. I like to think of it as, we have a box, stay within it. So these are our values of our organization, and it's really simple at MD&A. We just do the right thing. Whenever the right thing is in front of us, we do the right thing. That's our number one value as an organization. So what does that look like from an EHS standpoint? And that's the box that we expect people to stay in. But within that box, all of my different divisions within my organization have the ability to implement their EHS programs, processes in the most productive way that they can. And that gives them this ownership and flexibility that allows them to move forward.
From a safety culture perspective, and what you were talking about a moment ago around doing the right thing, being an entrepreneur, it's really difficult for me because people will always say, oh, well, I wasn't trained on how to do this. And my answer is, oh, none of us were trained on how to do this. If we're doing something special and unique, we got to figure it out as we go. And so for me, I believe in do the right things every day, prioritize the right actions, and it's going to work out. And it's kind of the way it's always been. It's like, if you have one objective, and let's just say it's to roll out a feature on the technology. Well, if you're spending time in a meeting talking about, something that's unrelated, you ask yourself, are you actually spending your efforts and time and energy on the right things? That's going to help us do your number one thing. And it's funny because I think what you were talking about is so interesting around advising people having consistency of outcomes is because you keep people in, and everybody looks down upon the concept of stay in the box, be in the box. It's like, you know what? Boxes are there for a reason. How do you have a standard if you don't structure it? How do you make sure that people are doing the right things or avoiding doing things that will injure them or hurt the business or otherwise if you don't give somebody bumpers, a framework, call it a box, call it whatever. So explain to me like the box theory that you were talking about a moment ago.
Well, the box is it's a framework, right? So I guess the best way to explain it is to start by explaining what most people, or what I would explain is the opposite of the box, right? So in my human performance trainings, I do this fun little thing where I say, the alternative is we don't give them any information, right? Or we think we give them the right information, but they don't have it. And the phrase that I say for that is we tell them, hey, there's a box out there somewhere. I dare you to go find it, right? Well, our job as leaders is to say, we can believe based upon our experience and the work that we see in front of ourselves, that we think this is where this box is. And you create real framework that matches the type of work we do. Not something that we imagine in some office somewhere, something that we worked with the people that do the work to make sure is, the right process or the right way to think about risk associated with that. And then what we do is we create that framework, but we give them flexibility, the flexibility that they need to do their job within that box. And if you do that right, it builds trust. And the other part of that equation is you have to be there for them whenever they ask a question about the situation they're in. Where is their help chain? Do people actually care whenever I ask for questions? Now, my number one, Mike Fish, he's absolutely awesome at his job. And very regularly, he will be receiving multiple phone calls at any given time because he's developed that trust within the workforce that they can stop and ask that question, and he can provide that practical answer or guidance they need to be able to move forward. And every interaction that happens from that standpoint, and this is where we mess up as leaders every once in a while, we think of that as a cost to the organization whenever that happens. I completely see it differently. It's an opportunity to teach and build. So that teaching is happening in two particular ways. Myself, when I get that phone call, or let's say Mike gets the phone call, we are learning from the real work that is being done. We are providing our practical guidance back to that individual or building capacity within that individual so that they can make better decisions going forward. And they have the ability to share that going forward with other people. That is the capacity that allows organizations to grow. If you don't have that happening within your organization, growth is going to be so painful for you that it's probably going to stop prematurely. And that's been what's we've been fortunate with at MD&A is as tough as it's been, and our growth has been much, much higher than we ever expected it would be. It's enabled us to have the capacity to, at least in the short run, get through some of those situations and maybe build upon it as we move forward. I'm sure you've heard many people, and I'm gonna misappropriate this as I paraphrase it. But when you invest in yourself, right, you want to do that as soon as you possibly can, because that investment in yourself is only going to pay dividends going forward, and it gives you this opportunity to continue to build upon it. I couldn't imagine living my life in a way where I wasn't always looking for opportunities to learn or ultimately invest in myself, right? And it creates this infrastructure that I have to, when I'm in the right room at the right time with the right people, to have the right conversations.
That's a big statement regarding who you are as an individual. It's interesting because I think about that a lot. We're talking about our families and our wives and kids and how we're the adventurous ones and our wives maybe are more I won't speak for yours, but mine is definitely more conservative and more of a homebody. And I'm the guy that will go out and always be looking for adventure and finding opportunities. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes that's not, but you need both types in the world. And my aspiration is very rarely comfort. And I want to be safe, but I don't want to be comfortable. And there's a difference in a mindset. And I think having a person that understands those two different mindsets is a really interesting way of living, because she reminds me often that striving for sake of striving is not healthy. You should always be trying to advance for lots of various reasons, but have clarity in what you're trying to achieve. And sometimes I just want change. I just want action.
But hey, that adventure that you were on when you're striving for change, right? That's an opportunity for you to learn from whatever mistake that comes from that, right? As long as you fail relatively safely along the process. But that advancement is the most important part, right? And we all know that we could come up with any goals that we want to have out there. And sometimes people will come out with goals that are so crazy that that they're not even close to being achievable. And that's kind of something that we're limiting ourselves with. But if we really think through, a wish that we have and, what opportunities there are out there to truly achieve that, then we can break it down into smaller parts. We can figure out what those obstacles are, and we can move forward in a way that tomorrow we're a little bit better than we were today. And then we have that opportunity tomorrow to figure out what the next best step is going to be for us. We use a phrase around here, and one of my VPs steals it from me all the time, is change is actually incremental, right?
It is.
Every once in a while, we'll get to leap. It's usually for a really bad reason or some really crazy lucky reason that we have. But most change in our life is incremental. We just need to make sure that we're moving those increments in the right direction.
We call it the horizon. Which way are you facing? Are you directionally going the right direction? because you're going to make mistakes. But as long as you're going directionally in the right direction and you know what the horizon looks like, then you're going to be okay. And
And
that's
you
kind
got
of
to be
well,
moving too, Michael. We never get to stay the same. We're always
no,
getting a little bit better or we're getting a little bit worse. And
sure.
that metaphor directly relates to your EHS program at your particular organization. What are the next goals that we have? How do we build upon what we have without adding bureaucracy and complexity? So throughout the years, I remember when I first started with MD&A, the simple goal that I wanted to have whenever I started was I immediately recognized when I came in the door, and this was in 2013. I looked back at the records, and in 2012, there was one near miss reported in our entire organization. As somebody that has cut his teeth in a world where serious injury and fatality prevention is really important, you can't learn as an organization from your failures enough. The frequency just isn't high enough and the learning curve would be too long. So you need an organization that is willing to be honest with itself whenever a mistake happens. And you have to get those near miss reports. So the first thing that I wanted to do, and I aligned our leadership and our organization to create a framework of trust where every year we build upon people telling us more and more near misses that were happening in the organization. And that gave me information that I was able to use where I could look for serious injury and fatality potential from a near miss reporting perspective, which is a game changer that I learned whenever I worked for Alcoa, right? Where's the energy? How is the energy potentially going to kill somebody? And how do we learn about this before something terrible happens to somebody? And now, to be honest, I can't even quote how many near misses we have. Our only goal as an organization with near miss reporting is every near miss that happens, we strive to make sure that we capture and document that. Because if there is an opportunity to learn, we want to use that opportunity to learn. And that has given me the best data that I could possibly have to look back and correlate the information that we need for serious injury and fatality prevention, which is a whole podcast in itself.
Yes, it is. And it's fantastic. So just out of curiosity, and then we got to wrap up because we could talk all day, and I love it. You are a dynamic speaker and interesting human being. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon, and actually maybe even doing another podcast. How many states do you guys do business in today?
I think the easy way to say it, Michael, is we do work in pretty much every state. Yeah, I can't, I'm going through my head and I can't think of a state that we haven't done work in within the last 3 years. We do a lot of work in the Mid-Atlantic region. We have a lot of customers that love us in the Mid-Atlantic region, a lot in the Midwest, because there's a lot of coal-fired power plants in the Midwest. I encourage your listeners to actually educate themselves a little bit about where their power comes from and how many power plants there are in their particular region. We do a little bit less work in the West because there's actually less power plants in the West. There's more people in the East, so we need more power. All these data centers that they're putting in, a lot of them are in the Mid-Atlantic region, and there's a lot of stress on the grid in that particular area because that's where the internet infrastructure is best in the United States. So all this infrastructure that we work with in the United States and we appreciate does have some sort of plan behind it, and it's quite a bit more complicated than we think it is.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, because that's actually my industry background. I cut my teeth originally in subsea fiber and data centers in the 90s, so a long time ago. But what people don't realize is that data centers are pretty much just power stations. They just suck power and convert it into data, and they send it out. And so you think about these data centers or like AI and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, you've got mega computers that are using energy to convert data into insight. And it's all power based. Everything we do is, and that's why when somebody builds a data center, the power infrastructure that's necessary is actually more important than even the fiber infrastructure and the data access. Everybody thinks it's pure data. How many terabytes or whatever gigabytes can I get into that facility? It's actually power
Yeah.
management. Power management is the hardest part of
And
the
the
entire
grid
journey.
is dynamic. So power is being moved to different
Yes.
places based upon demand at any given time. But the one thing a data center usually has is constant demand.
Yes.
And they expect
Yes.
that to be very reliable because,
Yes.
if the whole data center shuts down, every bit of infrastructure, all the ones and zeros, they don't get any support anymore. They just disappear.
Well, for me, I'll tell you what, that is a whole nother podcast because I made a living doing that analysis of surge demand on data centers and frequencies, both satellite as well as TDMA and cellular as well as data centers. So believe me, I understand surge demand, and when something is flatlined at the top, it's very, very difficult to optimize to make money. So thank you so much, Matt. I have enjoyed this immensely. I am looking forward to releasing this. So when people listen to it, they're going to have a ball. And I will share those pictures as well as how they can get a hold of you. And I'm going to come visit you in upstate when I'm out on the East Coast again. I just got back from New York literally 2 days ago, so probably could have done this in person if I planned better. But
Love to meet up with you, Michael. And I think we just caught the tip of the iceberg. So hopefully this inspires a few people. Think about their career maybe a little bit differently. Maybe adjust how they their perspective a little bit about how they support their organizations. Because there's a lot of opportunity out there, particularly if you understand the science of human and organizational performance. You're open-minded and you avoid bureaucracy.
I absolutely love it, man. Thank you. And from a Yellowbird perspective, I think you are the absolute perfect model for when somebody says, I have a safety person. Very few people could go to where you are and do what you're doing and also go to a mine shaft or to a chemical manufacturer. There's so many nuances in all these things. And so it's such a dynamic discussion because you think about what we're solving for here, the right human being to do the right job. This conversation is exactly what I hoped it would be. So thank you again. And I'm going to say goodbye for now.
All right. Take care.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.